for this video, we're going to be looking at if and else, right? We've seen the if conditional statement. Now we're going to add the else on top of it. And we're also going to look at a bit about helper functions. Again, this is not just like all the other videos in this playlist, in case you haven't caught on by now. This is not an exact answer for any checkpoint or exercise in CMU CS Academy, but I hope that, it helps you understand the concepts and the ideas of what's going on so that you can go and figure those all out on your own. So what I've got so far right here is sort of a sorry excuse for a roller coaster sort of thing, right? There's our roller coaster. You're going up and then eventually you're going to go down, have a good time or whatever. When I run this, and I'm really sorry for the abomination that's about to show up on your screen, when I run this right now, I have on mouse press, I make an anxious face, like a nervous face. And that should happen as the person is going up. I'm so sorry. It's a thing of nightmares. They should be anxious. But then after they get to the top and they start going down and having fun, we go from nervous to fun. So we're going to add that in. And as we're adding that in, we're going to learn about else statements for ifs. And we're also going to learn about helper functions. So let's get started. Right now I have the oval, I have an on mouse press function, and all of this code here to make my nervous or anxious face. So the first thing is to get it working with an if statement. So the idea is that the nervous face, as I'm clicking, it should only appear when it's on the left side of the screen, which I recognize it's mirrored, but it should only appear when it's on the left side of the screen over here. As they're going up the roller coaster, they're nervous. And then it should change to a happy face. As I create faces down this way, they should be, happy. We're enjoying the roller coaster. Why else would you get on it? So, quick and easy if statement. By the way, just a note, my on mouse press, I did just an X and a Y instead of a mouse X, mouse Y. It doesn't matter, right? I don't know. I just called them X and Y. So for my anxious face, I'm going to say it should be anxious when I'm on the left side of the screen. So I'm going to say if my X is less than, the left side of the screen would be, if the X is less than 200, then I will draw the anxious face. And let me just indent all of these things over here. By the way, what I had to do right there, one example of why a helper function is good, right? Like manipulating these lines, these 12 lines, 11 lines over here, it's kind of annoying to do. Next, we're going to do what's called an else statement, which I don't think I've talked about yet in these videos. I think we've seen multiple ifs in a challenge somewhere and a solution, but we haven't seen the else statement yet. So the way the else statement works, it has to be paired with an if. You got to start with an if. And then if you want, you can have an else afterwards. You don't need to have an else. The way it works is your if statement, if you're not comfortable with that, quick review, I guess, is it says if checks some condition inside these parentheses that can get more complex. We'll talk about that later. If this condition is true, if X is smaller than 200, then you will go into this indented part underneath the if statement and do all of the code inside of the if statement. If it's not true, you would skip all of this and move on to the other part. Now, you might say, okay, so what is an else for? If I don't have the else and I just have more code over here, this code will always run. Right? I'll do the if. If the if is true, I'll run all the lines here, 7 through 18, and then I'll do my ASD semicolon lines. The else statement lets you say, all right, when the if is not true, we will do the else. This is what the else statement does. If this is not true, we do the else. If this is true, I don't do the else. I skip it. So this becomes like a one or the other choice. It's not, do I do this? If I don't do this, I just move on, forward. So we're going to say else, I'm going to make a happy face. I don't think else make a happy face. I don't think this comment here is going to make an issue. Maybe it will, because Python has some spacing stuff. If not, whatever. We can just get rid of it. We'll learn something. So we'll leave it there for now. So all right, else we're gonna make a smiley face. To make a smiley face, I'll take the base of my face, which has the eyes, and then we're gonna make a yellow circle at x, y plus 5 with a radius of 15. Fill equals yellow. I'm making my best guess. The face might look kind of weird. And then we're gonna make another circle at x, y plus 7. And I think radius 15 will be okay. Let's see. So I'm gonna rerun. Anxious face, working out. Smiley face. Right, I need to put the yellow after the black part so that it covers the black part so we can have a smiley face. It's good enough. It's kind of gross, but whatever. It's good enough. And so now we have this if-else statement working. It's going to make an anxious face on the left side over here. And then when I go to the right side, when my x, right, that on the left side, my x is less than 200. So I'm making, and we can see the x over there, right, in the bottom corner right there. I'm making nervous faces as we're going up towards the top of this roller coaster. And then as I start going down, now my x is not less than 200. So we'll do the else statement. And it will make my smiley face as we're going down the roller coaster. So that is the if versus else part of this. The next part is dealing with the fact that this code looks kind of gross. Like you saw before, I had to indent all of these lines. If I want to change stuff here, you know, I guess I can check this comment to be like, oh, I'm making the anxious face inside of this. This video is going on for a while, but whatever. We're gonna, I guess my videos are now like 15 minutes long instead of like 5. A big part of programming, yes, is knowing the tools and what you can do with the language, but is also about organizing your code in a way that makes sense and is easy to read, right? I know you're making this program, so you're gonna understand it, but other people, when you're actually working in the real world, are gonna have to look at your code. And then also there's the issue of future you, right? You might be making something that makes sense to you in the moment, and then you go to bed, you finish making this later, you come back and you're like, what in the world was going on? Comments are a good way to deal with that, but also just the structure of your program is a really good way, as long as you keep it nice and organized, is a really good way to keep your program readable. And so this is the idea. We've seen defining our own functions before. The idea of helper functions is to start, now that our code's going to start getting bigger and more complex, getting used to creating functions, not just for convenience or for whatever, but to help organize your code and make it more readable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define my own new function, and we'll call it nervous face. Doesn't need any input. It does need input. It does need input. It needs an x and a y coordinate so that it knows where it's going to be drawing that face. And then what I can do is just take all of this stuff here. I'm going to cut it and I'm going to paste it inside of this. And again, right, if I had made it in a helper function before, now I wouldn't have to be going around bringing all of these to indent appropriately, right? It was indented in a function and an if statement. And instead of saying, if it's less than 200, I'll do all this stuff to draw the nervous face or the anxious face, I can just call the function, if my x is less than 200, I will call the function nervous face at the x and the y, and it should create a nervous face at the x and the y. Let's check to make sure that we have no errors over here. Got an error. Nervous face. Let's get rid of the E, and then let's see. And so look at that. It's doing the exact same thing, but your on mouse press function is quite a bit. Oh, and by the way, the space is underneath the if. It's all good. Doesn't matter, right? It's happy about that. Your on mouse press becomes so much easier to read. Let's do this also for the happy face. So I'm going to make a new function. I'll call it def. I maybe should call it draw happy face, but I'm just going to call it happy face x and y. And by the way, like, I don't need these variables to be called x and y. I can call it face x. Well, I'm not going to call it face. Yeah, just so you can see. I can call it face x and face y, whatever. And in my else statement, I can call happy face, and then I will send it the values x and y. And this nonsense over here, we're just going to put it into our function this way. And here again, right, if I just dealt with the fact that I wanted to have a helper function at the beginning, I wouldn't have to be dealing with all that nonsense. And so the reason I'm doing this variable stuff is just to show you, right? You define the variables you're using. You define the local variables you're using by your parameters when you're creating your function. You can name it face x and face y, whatever. All the function knows is when I see you call happy face somewhere, I'm expecting you to give me two variables, a variable first and a variable second, and then I'm going to do stuff with those two variables eventually. Here, my on mouse press, I have an x and a y, and I called nervous face by sending it x first and y second. I'm going to call happy face by sending x again first and y again second. But it's not like that variable name is inherent to the value of it, right? Like you just name the variable whatever you want as long as it kind of makes some sort of sense. So I'm just fixing all of these to say face x and face y appropriately. Face x, face y, face x, face y. Now we should be good. Let's see, clicking everywhere, no complaints. And so, it might seem like a little bit extra to be like, why do I need to worry about creating a new function to send it over there? It was working fine before. The idea, and let me move my face away from here just so you can kind of see it. The idea is that you make a function. It does something, right? And what you should be doing as you move on and you start making more and more complex programs is using comments more. People don't like using comments. You really should. I'm going to say, this function creates a nervous face at the coordinates x, y. And then my happy face function, this function creates a happy face at the coordinates, whatever, face x, face y. I probably shouldn't have named them that anyways, but I was just trying to make a point. And so the idea is for someone to understand your on mouse press function, it's so much easier now, right? When I'm clicking my mouse, if my x coordinate is less than 200, I'm going to draw a nervous face. Otherwise, if my x coordinate, is not less than 200, I'm going to draw a happy face. This function becomes so much easier to understand. There's not all this extra code in it because we're using helper functions. The nervous face function, the happy face function, they're complex functions. There's a lot of stuff going on in them. But the idea is if you take the different complex parts of your program and put them in different spots, it becomes easier to understand and oftentimes easier to program too, because you get to focus on one problem at a time. In my nervous face function, I'm going to focus on creating my nervous face. In my happy face function, I'm going to focus on creating my happy face. On my on mouse press function, I'm going to focus on deciding to draw a nervous or a happy face depending on the appropriate time. It just makes it easier to break down your thinking into multiple little functions. It's kind of like doing an algebra problem at the beginning of Algebra 1 or something like that, where you're like, man, this word problem I can figure out in my head. Why am I doing all these inverse operations? That's kind of where we're at now. We're there where it's like, yeah, I can keep it all in my head. I can, it's good enough. I can still figure out, I can write my program. Eventually, your programs are going to get big, and you want to start doing it the right way. You want to start getting used to making your helper functions, separating all the different parts of your program out into individual tiny little pieces of problems to deal with, and then you kind of plug those puzzle pieces in together, as opposed to just having one big bowl of spaghetti that's just kind of overflowing. And yeah, maybe your brain gets it, but only right now while you're coding it, right? Anyways, I'm really scared that when I pause this and, see how long this video is, it's going to be close to 20 minutes. I hope it was helpful. Thank you to anyone who stayed for the entire time. And, I'll see you next time.